Hi everyone, this video today is going to cover lesson 4.6, that is graphing functions from a table. So when we talk about functions, a function can be represented as an equation, as a table, or a graph. And there are a variety of ways to move back and forth between them, but the one that we're going to talk about today is how to take a function, an equation, and then use that equation to make a table of values, and then use that table of values to make a graph. So it's kind of a three-part process. One thing is, a lot of questions people ask sometimes deal with, what do I put in the x column? And so typically what I usually say is to put 4 or 5 points over here. So -1, 0, 1, and 2, that works just fine. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that -1, just like we learned about in our last lesson, and I'm going to plug it in for the x. And so I'm going to write f of -1 is -1 plus 4, and that simplifies down to a 3. That means my output, or my y, is a 3. And if I wrote that as a coordinate, I would say -1, 3. And so that's just like what we talked about last time in the last video. Okay, so -1, 3, I can plot that point. Remember, the first number is your x, the second number is your y, and so we're going to go over -1 and up 3. And that is the point -1, 3. All right, I'm going to do the same thing with 0. And you know what? I'm going to skip this little step. I'm going to be a little bit lazy and skip this step with the f of x part. And I'm just going to say I'm going to plug it in here. And it's going to be 0 plus 4, which is 4. So I put 4 in my y column. And so my coordinate is 0, 4. 0 here, 4 here. To graph that, I go to 0 on the x-axis, and I go up to 4, and I put my point there. So that is the point 0, 4. Now, you don't always have to label it like I'm doing. I'm just doing that so that you can see where I'm going. I'm going to take a 1. I'm going to plug it in here. That's 1 plus 4. That is 5. You should start seeing a pattern, which of course we can easily see that pattern right now, right? It's 3, 4, 5. Can you guess what the next one's going to be? But let's first of all graph this one. 1, 5 is going to be up here. So here's the point 1, 5. And then lastly, like I said, we're going to plug in that 2. My guess is it's going to be a 6. 2 plus 4, and yes, that is 6. And so my point is 2, 6. Once again, that means I go over 2 and up 6. And there's my point 2, 6. Okay, so that's the basic gist of it. You just take the number, plug it in the function, see what comes out, and plot the point. Now, these have made a straight line. And because it is a function, I can connect those with a straight line. And when I draw my straight line, I am going to use a straight edge. And it should have an arrow on both sides of it. So there's an arrow on this side and an arrow on this side. Okay, let's look at another example. Once again, I'm going to take, actually this time I've taken different numbers. But here's the deal. I usually want to have at least one negative in there. 0 is a good one to always put in there. And then a couple positives. And this time we just counted by 2s. That's okay. So I'm going to plug in a -1. And that's going to give me negative times negative is positive. And so that's 2 plus 3, and that's 5. So my first point is -1, 5. So I'm going to go -1 on the x, up 5 on the y, and there's my point, -1, 5. I'm going to plug in a 0. And I already told you that 0 is my favorite because it's so easy. Because 0 times anything is 0. So that's 0 plus 3. So my point is 0, 3. 0 is my input, 3 is my output. 0, 3 goes right here. Plug in a 2. -2 times 2. That's supposed to be a positive 2. That's a -4 plus 3. Again, that comes out being -1. So my point is 2, -1. So I go +2 and -1, it comes down here. Now again, we should be seeing a pattern. However, on the last one, our x's changed by 1 every time, like +1, +1, +1. And these also went up, +1, +1, +1. On this example, we're not consistent. It went up 1, but then it went up 2. And then it's going to go up 2 again. So now my pattern might be a little different. I'm going to just plug in my number before I try to guess my pattern. So I'm going to plug in my 4. That gives me a -8 plus 3. That is a -5. So my point is 4, -5. So 4, -5 is here. Once again, I'm going to use a straight edge to connect my points, and I have an arrow on both sides. Now, you'll notice there is a pattern. I mean, it made a line, so there has to be a pattern. It just wasn't very easy to see from the table, but there is actually a pattern here. Okay, number 3, we're throwing in a fraction, kind of throwing us off here. But here's the story with fractions. If this is counting by 1/2, then let's count our x column by 2's. That way we don't have to deal with fractions really. In other words, if I plug in a -4 here, 1/2 times -4, that's a -2. So my y value answer is -1. So I have a -4, -1. So if you have a half here, let's count by 2's to avoid those fractions. Okay, -4, -1 is down here. Okay, I'm going to plug in a -2. That gives me a +1. Oh, nope, a -1. -1 plus 1, and that is 0. Let's talk about identifying that pattern again. It's going up by 2, but then up by 4. So there should be a little bit of a pattern with these first 3. Let's check it out. It went up 1. My guess is this is going to be 1 also, but let's plug it in and see. So it's a 0. Love working with zeros. It makes it so much easier for me. So now I have 0 plus 1. That is a 1, just like I predicted. And 0, 1, 0, and 1 is my point. I forgot to plot my point -2, 0. So I'm going to plot 0, 1 is 0, 1 here. But I need to go back and plot my -2, 0. -2, 0 is right here. And one more point is a 4. So I'm going to take a 4 and plug it in. Half of 4 is 2. So that's 3. So my point is 4, 3. Go to the right 4, go up 3. And there's my 4, 3. Now when I draw my line, I'm going to use a straight edge, and I'm going to draw that line. And again, I can see that there's a bit of a pattern because they all fit on the same line. Oh boy, I just said that about a line, and now these are not going to be lines, I can tell already. So let's just try plugging in and seeing what they do make. So this is a -3. I want to put that in parentheses. That's important, especially with the negatives. So -3 to the second means -3 times -3. That's a 9 minus 4. That is 5. So my point is -3, 5. My next one is -1 squared. Plug it in. So I got -1, -3. That is all the way down here. Plug in my 0. Easy peasy. That's 0 minus 4. That's a -4. So this point is 0, -4. It's not a line, is it? Okay, so something's different. It's not making a line. It is making a pattern, though. We'll see that pattern. So I plug in my 2. I get 2 squared, and that's 4. 4 minus 4 is 0. So my point is 2, 0. That is up here. This looks like it's not really a pattern, but actually it is. I'm going to tell you a secret here. I just happen to know that this is actually a parabola, and I'm not sure if you've learned that before, but it makes this U shape. We're going to study that later in the year, so you don't really need to know that for now. The ones that you were supposed to know for now was this one, -3, 5. This one, which was 2, 0. This one, which is -1, -3, and this one, which is 0, -4. But I just want to point out that there is a pattern. Most functions will have some kind of pattern. Okay, remember this is an absolute value, and I'm not sure if you remember what an absolute value graph looks like, but it makes a V. So I plug in that -2. 3 times -2 is -6, but absolute value is always a positive answer. So my y is actually 6. So -2, 6 is my point. negative 2 and up 6. I'm going to keep going here. 3 times negative 1. Absolute value is always a positive answer. So negative 1, 3 is here. Oh good, this one's a 0. That makes my life easier. That's a 0. So 0, 0 is a point. And 1 might be my second favorite because it's just about as easy. It's a 3. Oops, but remember absolute value of 3 is always positive, so it's still 3. And so our point here is 1, 3. Now, you may not be able to see this. I think you probably can. It's going to make a V. It's going to look like this. It makes a V. Absolute values always make a V. All right, last problem. This one's kind of different, but it's actually really easy. H of x is equal to 2. To what? Well, just 2. There's no x here. There's no nothing. Like, there's nowhere to plug it in. So y is just 2. It's always 2. If it's negative 4, it's 2. If it's negative 2, it's 2. If it's 2, it's 2. If it's 4, it's 2. If it's 6, it's 2. Everything's 2. So there are my points. It's always 2. Do you remember we learned the term for this? It's called constant. This is actually a constant function because it's just flat. And again, we should probably have an arrow on both sides. Okay, so that's how we graph from a table. We plug the numbers in the x column into the function, we see what we get for output, and we plot those points. This is something we're going to work a lot on. This is like a key part of Algebra 1, so we're going to spend a lot of time learning how to graph points and learning how to graph from a function. Okay, I'll see you in class next time.